Hi there, I am Dr. Vernita Glenn White. I go by Dr. V, and I am a strategic transformational coach. I am also the CEO and founder of Glenn White Global Solutions, a high-level training and development company where we bring practical applications to complex situations. And our main focus is on helping individuals and teams work through their personal glass ceilings so they can show it to be more powerful in their lives and in their careers. And the motto is really to embrace your brilliance, because I truly believe that if everyone embraced their own unique gifts and talents, we can truly change the world by working together, because we are all interconnected. All right, so if you are new to me, welcome. I am doing this personal challenge for me. This is the evolution of my career, and I thought it would be a great idea to go back and do some of the old presentations and things that I did as a doctoral student and then as a college professor. I've already done 2 videos in this series. This is the 3rd one, and we're going to talk about teaching mathematics through social justice. Let me see, this was in 2015. I was at the University of Central Florida presenting this conference. And I think this was my last year in my PhD program. And at that time, we were just doing presentations just to get, as we say, lines on the Vita. There are a few presentations that I've done a lot of presentations, but a lot of them were co-presenters. A lot of them were doubled, because that's the smart thing. I want to share that little tidbit before we jump into it. If you're doing, you're allowed to do the same presentation at multiple conferences. You may have to tweak them a little bit to go with their goals and their outlines for the conference, but that is why you may not see a lot of videos in this series. But if you look at my Vita or resume, you'll see that it's a lot more than I actually did videos for, because you want to get smart. You want to use your things over and over again. So I actually made this into a little children's book. I don't think I actually published it, but it's like somewhere out on the internet. So I'm going to go through that and just bring you along on this journey. I do want to invite you to do the same. Go back and look at some of your old presentations or some of your conference talks and record them, because I started this, one, to see the evolution of my career, but I remember that there are so many people that would come up to me after my presentations and was like, hey, can I get a copy of that? Or, which you don't give copies of your full presentations out, you make a PDF version that you want to give to the audience, and you give them that copy. Oh, one more tip, start collecting emails when you do that. Could have had a whole full business had I known back then. But anyway, but then people will still get the presentation copy or the handouts, but then they don't do anything with them, because a lot of times we like to collect information and not act on it. But then I realized it would have been a great resource had I either, one, recorded myself at the conferences and uploaded them to something like YouTube or my website, or have myself pre-recorded already. So after I did the presentation, I can automatically say, hey, go here, for an instant replay. So just things that I wasn't even thinking about at the time. I just want to share that with you so you don't make the same mistakes. But the other part to that is, even though I don't focus so much on teaching social justice through mathematics or teaching mathematics through social justice, I still think it's an important and relevant piece. Someone may be on this journey. So we hear about one man's trash is another man's treasure, or woman. Same thing with knowledge. We may not be using this knowledge right now, but it was given us for a reason and for a purpose. And who knows, someone may come along and say, that's exactly what I needed. So let's not hoard our information. Let's reuse and recycle and upgrade our content. I also talk about this as my journey to a strategic transformational coach. And what does this have to do with what I'm currently doing now? So again, if you're new to me, I was a K-12 teacher, instructional coach, worked at the district level, went to go get my PhD in mathematics and education, then I became a college professor, and now I'm working to be a full-time digital entrepreneur and transformational coach, consultant, speaker, and author. And what I learned from just going back and looking at, wow, how did I get here? I've always had a passion for helping people discover who they are, helping people understand other people in the world, and not really look at our differences as a bad thing. Look at ways to use what's unique about us and what's unique about someone else to either help each other, support each other, or you be the person to help and support someone who can't do that on their own. Also, to speak up and use your voice. That's really what social justice is about. And becoming a coach, especially a transformational coach, is all about a lot of inner work and uncovering who we're supposed to be. And I created this story with the little boy being the center focus, because if we teach children early how to use their voice, then they become more powerful adults who also use their voice. So let's jump right in. I'm going to share my screen. I'm doing these exactly how I did them. I did not edit any of the presentations. Hopefully you can still see me in the corner. I was doing some of my other videos and I had too many boxes open at the top, but hopefully this is it, because I like being in the screen. In my other videos, you'll see where I'm not in the screen because I want to crop it, but I think I like being up here. All right, so you will see I have not edited any of these conferences. These are exactly how I created them during the year that you see on the screen. And I am going to read through them, well, most of the slides, because on this one, I think it's very word heavy because I was writing a storybook. But this is not to insult your intelligence. I'm only reading because some people are auditory listeners, and I'm an auditory learner when it's like general information. Like I could be doing something else, but I could still hear the information if it doesn't require me to really sit down and focus. So that's what I'll read, not to insult your intelligence. You can do double speed if that helps you as well on the replay, but I will be reading them just again, not to insult your intelligence, but to share the information for people who may not be looking directly at their computers. All right, so let's get started. So critical pedagogy at the core, strategies to support teachers in developing social justice through mathematics. I was all in, before I came to my doctoral program, I was working with teachers, especially in mathematics. I had come out of the classroom, and I always felt that my purpose was bigger than teaching students in a classroom. Nothing wrong with teaching students in the classroom. We need those dynamic teachers right there. You know, we call it ground zero, teaching the students, but I always felt something like a higher calling, because, or it wasn't even a higher calling, to have more impact. Because if I worked with, like I was teaching like 20, 30 students in the classroom. Yes, I was in the secondary. So that was about 150, 170, and sometimes 180 students throughout the day, which was still a lot. But then think about if I could work with teachers and use my skill set to help them to be better teachers. I was working with 17 teachers. So do 17 times about 150. That's how many students I can impact. And then as a college professor, I could do more. So, you know, it just kind of grew. And so I realized, looking back, I was always prepared I was always in a position to, I guess, like train the trainer or lead the leader or coach the coach, per se. All right, let's go. So I did this with a partner at UCF. Now, this is the thing, we learned this too. A lot of times we give each other credit. So I did this presentation, this was all on my own, but I wanted to support an upcoming doctoral student because someone did the same thing for me. Same thing when I became a professor, we started linking up with people like, hey, let's become research buddies, let's become writing partners, let's become conference partners. And not necessarily saying that you have to do all the work, but it's just a faster way to get your name out. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's just another way to support each other. All right, let's go. Okay, critical pedagogy at the core, strategies to support teachers in developing social justice through mathematics. I presented this with a partner at the University of Central Florida back in 2015. So critical pedagogy. What is critical pedagogy and how does it relate to teaching and learning mathematics? What might a mathematics look like framed within critical pedagogy? And then I have reference down here at the bottom, and you will see the reference at the end of the presentation. So critical pedagogy. Now back then, I had all these words up here because I wasn't confident in presenting information. Now I could teach you something, but even when I was teaching mathematics in the classroom, I still had a guide and a structure to help me follow. So at these conferences in front of all of these people, I had all the words up there. And now I can do a presentation with a few words or only pictures or nothing at all. So I have grown significantly from this time. All right, Paul Freire, I hope that I'm saying that correctly. He said, learning to perceive social, political, and economic contradictions and take action against the oppressive elements of reality. Critical pedagogy promotes openness, debate, and engagement. And he said this first in 1970 and again in 2000. And I presented this in 2015. Critical pedagogy, not a one-size-fits-all pedagogy, values background knowledge, culture, and lived experiences. Personal interpretations of lived worlds, supports problem-posing pedagogy. And these references came from the earliest being 1996 all the way to 2012. And this is interesting because later on, as a college professor, where I was consulting with universities, I really honed in on on implicit and unconscious biases and core values of a person. Had no idea I was about to do that so many years later, but it's just interesting that I had, this desire to learn more about this concept back then. These slow transitions. Teaching mathematics for social justice. It's a growing field. Back then it really was. No one was really talking about it. It's an extension of critical pedagogy and mathematics seen as an analytical tool. So yes, let me see, how can I say this? Mathematics has always been an analytical tool, but now to use it as a tool as it sits in social justice, that was the unique thing about this presentation and the whole thing about teaching mathematics for social justice. Now, I didn't come up with that. I just want to be clear. That is a concept on its own that, has extensive research in it. But in my opinion, because a lot of people don't like mathematics, it's not as popular as a lot of other topics in mathematics or in education. All right, so Gutstein from 2006 said, reading the world with mathematics, that's another part of teaching mathematics for social justice, writing the world with mathematics, and developing cultural and social identities. How many of you knew that you can learn all of that just by using mathematics wrapped in social justice or social justice? Yeah, it would be mathematics wrapped in social justice. When I presented this, they were looking at me like kind of strange, and I'm remembering for a long time because they could not wrap their heads around what I was talking about and how that related to the globalization and poverty issue. So I had to work to get the room to come full circle. And that's what I'm realizing too, as an educator, and a teacher, I love setting the foundation so that you can follow me along. You may be lost for a little bit. It's kind of like you're in church. If you go to church or listen to sermons, they go through all of this background, then you're like, what's the point? And then it comes full circle. And sometimes I try to just go straight to the point and it goes over people's heads. So for me and my style, I love laying a foundation. I love giving facts and information and then say, this is how we do it in the practical way. So I didn't know this at the time, but looking back and doing this a few times or several times or many times, I realized that's just my style. All right, so teaching mathematics for social justice, according to Gonzalez in 2009 and Stinson in 2012. It provides access to high quality mathematics instruction, re-entering mathematics curriculum around the experiences of students, perceiving mathematics as a tool for social political critique, and use of mathematics to radically recognize or reconfigure society. I was such an activist. All right, Common Core State Standards for Mathematics. Again, this was in 2015 that I did this. This was still around the time when Common Core came out. I think the first official was in 2010. Schools really start picking up on it in 2011, 2012. So I think a lot of people at this point have dropped Common Core state standards and they're focusing on their state standards. Some people still do Common Core standards. It was mathematics and English language arts. But this is my thing. And I said this in several of my videos, and obviously because my background was mathematics, you will see Common Core throughout the presentations, standards are standards, regardless of the names and the type of standards. For some reason, it was odd to me. People were flipping out because of the standards. And I'm like, we've had standards pretty much since school really started, but formalized, especially in mathematics, since the 1980s. And it could have been into the 1970s, but really, structurally in the 1980s. So when people were flipping out, I was like, what are you flipping out for? Now, how they were used, yes, but the overall theme of standards was not new. So I just wanted to drop that in case you didn't watch the other videos and why I'm talking about Common Core. All right, so there were new national standards that caused for a shift in how mathematics is taught and learned. The focus the shift was focus, coherence, and rigor. I won't do this in this presentation, but if anyone comments down below and really wants to know, there's a whole history of how we got here. And it really, the last straw was us losing sort of the space race, and realizing that our students weren't strong enough to compete globally, especially in mathematics and science. And now with technology, that's lumped into STEM. STEM has always been around, but it wasn't labeled STEM, and it wasn't such a drive until recently. But it really started back in the 70s and 80s, like, whoa. And really the 90s, like, hey, can we get it together? So they were like, let's just put our emphasis on focus, coherence, and rigor. Because they figured if we stop being so broad and narrow, and then come and narrow down what we want to focus on, things should be a lot better in school. So that's what the purpose of Common Core for mathematics was. So they call them the key shifts in mathematics. Again, I talked about focus, coherence, and rigor, and they really wanted to hone in on what rigor meant, because rigor is subjective, right? So they wanted to focus on conceptual understanding, procedural skills and fluency, and application. So can I just do the problems if someone gave it to me? Yes. Do I understand the why behind why I do certain problems? And then how can I apply this to different situations? So can you kind of see where I'm going with the social justice? Again, in my previous videos, I talk about the standards for mathematical practices. Go back and listen to why I included, why these are so important to me. Just briefly, this was a major part of my dissertation that was coming up at the time. So I was really immersed in these standards for mathematical practices. 1, make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. 2, reason abstractly and quantitatively. 3, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. 4, model with mathematics. 5, use appropriate tools strategically. 6, attend to precision. 7, look for and make use of structure. 8, look for and express regularity and repeated reasoning. I may do my dissertation presentation in this series so you can understand or see how I use these in research. Quickly, standards for mathematical practices were what should have been used in the classrooms to develop mathematicians. And mathematicians, not so much that they had to love mathematics, but to think like a mathematician, problem solving, critical thinking, looking at patterns. So they said if we can name them and actually show you a strategy and get students involved in that process, then they'll become better students at mathematics. So this was breaking down what does really teaching and learning and applying mathematics look like in the classroom. I tied all of these together: Common Core State Standards for Mathematics, the standards of mathematical practices, and teaching mathematics for social justice. I did this through storytelling and problem solving, and I focused on these areas: budget, hunger, public health, environment, and racial difference. So I am going to read this story. I created this. So I actually created this story in one of my courses in my doctoral program. This had to be my maybe first year or early second year. And this is another trick. Make your assignments that are going to be actual products. So don't do an assignment just for the sake of doing an assignment. So kind of like what I'm doing now, going back and repurposing content. I did that in my doctoral program, and this is how I got this presentation. So I had a professor who was big on social justice. That's where I learned from Dr. Ortiz. social justice for mathematics. It was fascinating, and I wrote a little book. I think that was an assignment. So then it was like, hey, why not present this at this conference? So 2 birds, 1 stone. Actually 3, because I told you, I think I published this somewhere. All right, anyway, so introduction. Like most 5th grade students, Antonio often wonders why he has to learn mathematics. During class, Antonio daydreams about issues that are affecting his classmates. He wishes there was something he could do about the problems instead of learning mathematics. I saw that all the time, 1, as a classroom teacher, and then 2, as I was going out and working with some of my other teachers, I realized that this problem wasn't just unique to me. All the students want to know, why am I learning mathematics? And even when I got to the collegiate level, all the students were like, why am I learning mathematics? Antonio already knows that language arts will help him become a more fluent reader, proficient writer, and eloquent speaker. That science helps him to learn about nature, how to keep his body healthy, and how the world operates overall. And Antonio already knows that history and geography are important in order to understand different cultures, societies, and foreign lands. Antonio also knows how the arts allow him to be creative and expressive, how technology introduced him to the world of software and video simulations. However, Antonio has connected with all the subjects in school except mathematics. Antonio wonders, why does he have to learn mathematics anyway? What has it done for him lately? Antonio thinks that simply adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing will not help the issues he daydreams about. Antonio's questions. Some of Antonio's classmates wear the same clothes and do not have school supplies, but he knows that their parents work. So his first question, should his classmates have everything they need? Where does the money go? And again, this was in the area of poverty and budget. Antonio often saves the snacks from lunch and gives them to his classmates to take home at the end of the day. While he is willing to help some of his friends, Antonio does not understand how his friends could still be hungry after breakfast and lunch at school. So his second question, aren't his friends sitting down for hot-cooked family dinners at home like he does? And this was the area of hunger. Some of Antonio's classmates miss numerous days of school because they are constantly sick. While Antonio has only had the common cold, he reads the posters in the school's nurse's office and is amazed at all of the possibilities that could cause his classmates to be sick. His third question, if Antonio's classmates, or if my classmates, if I was rewriting this, so if Antonio's classmates and other students are having such illnesses, are they being properly treated? And this was around the concern of public health. In some areas around Antonio's school, there is no clean water, and a few families have to purchase bottles of water for daily tasks that Antonio often takes for granted. Some days on the way home, Antonio sees broken water sprinklers that are spouting onto the sidewalks. Question 4, why is there enough water to fill the streets, but not the homes of some of his classmates? So this was the area of environment, or the issue of environment. Fortunately, Antonio's in a school that is open, safe, and full of diversity. However, he hears stories of how some of his classmates' parents are treated in various situations and how some of his classmates are perceived when they enter into their neighborhoods. So question 5, is Antonio naive to these situations, or should differences even matter? This is in the area of racial differences. Antonio shared his thoughts with his teacher, Mr. Scott, and he charged Antonio to think about his questions. How can you use mathematics to understand and address the problems that are facing your classmates? Is it possible that you can use your understanding of the subjects that you enjoy and connect them to mathematics to better understand each situation? So Antonio connects with other teachers. After Antonio spoke to Mr. Scott, he went to his other teachers for various information about the issues that were on his mind. Since Antonio is still reluctant to believe that mathematics can help him solve or make people aware of his classmates' problems, Mr. Scott gave Antonio practice problems similar to the information he collected. He wanted to ensure that Antonio made the connections to mathematics. So social problem number 1, this is a long one, but I'm going to read it. National poverty rate in 2010, 15.1%. There are 46.2 million people in poverty and 2.6 million increase from 2009. That means that 1.5 out of 10 people in the US were in poverty. In 2010, 11% of families fell below the poverty rate. The poverty level of single parents with 1 to 3 children in 2010 was $15,030 to $22,190. The poverty level of 2 adults with 1 to 3 children in 2010 was $17,557 up to $26,023. The child poverty rate was 21.6% in 2010, and more than 11 million children were added to the poverty population between 2009 and 2010. This means that more than 1 in 5 children in the US lived in poverty in 2010, and I got that from NPR. So again, tying social problems, and at this time, people really weren't talking about real problems. So when they talked about real world problems in mathematics, they were still these hypothetical situations or just some context, baking, going to the bank, playing games in schools or taking field trips. That's what real world mathematics was used for real world problems. So I wanted to change that. Let's talk about some real world problems and some social issues at the same time. So a math related problem, number 1, again, this is a lot. And during this presentation, I didn't read this. So I had handouts that I gave to different groups, and we worked through the situation. I'm trying to remember, I don't think we talked through the problems, but I think they talked about them in their groups and then how would they use this in their schools. So in the most extreme cases of poverty, people lived on less than $1 a day. Almost half the world, that's 3 billion people at the time that I did that research, lives on less than $2 a day. In this exercise, students will understand the difficulty in meeting basic needs on a budget of $30 a month or $1 a day. You have the task of organizing the family budget for groceries and entertainment for an entire month. You will only have $30. Below is a list of common foods that may be in the grocery store on a weekly basis. So I had a shopping list, and then I put items on the shopping list. So like oranges, beef, chicken, ice cream, tomatoes, potato chips, cookies, so forth. Between, I think the lowest is $1 and the highest I'm seeing is $7. And then I had a fun activity. You had to include that. So this one was go to the movies, and that was $8. And then were you gonna buy popcorn, buy a new video game, new clothes for schools, play sports, and then I had a dollar amount attached to that. Then Antonio decides to create a poster with the family, what a family may spend on needs and wants. And the poster, the family of 3 had a soda, chips, and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. 1 person went ice skating and 2 went to the movie. Write an expression and determine if the family stayed within their budget. So I presented this problem, and then that was a way for students to, 1, understand whoa, stop taking stuff for granted. You don't realize that people aren't making a lot of money just to make ends meet. And then what does that really look like? Because still not having a whole lot of money, there were still opportunities for you to live a life, So I think at this time, I didn't want people to think because you were in poverty that you were malnourished and had to stay in your house or anything like that. I knew people that did make a lot of money, but they still enjoyed full lives. So I wanted to dispel sort of the myth of what does being in poverty look like. And then I go to social problems number 2. Now I can't remember what it was, but that order that I went through, that's the same order I'm going through here. So social problem number 2, in the United States, nationwide, 17% of children in poverty. The highest rates of extreme poverty are concentrated in the South, and poverty is especially relevant among Black and Latino children. Food insecurity, lack of affordable housing, and other economic hardships affects millions of American children. Population of the United States, roughly 300 million of the population. I don't really know what I was saying after that last statement. I think something got cut off. But at the time of this, back in 2015, when I was doing the recording, those were the stats. The global picture, 1/3 of deaths, some 18 million people a year, or 50,000 a day, are due to poverty-related causes. 600 million of the world's children live in absolute poverty. 800 million people go to bed hungry every day. Every year, almost 11 million children die before their 5th birthday. That's 30,000 children a day. Most of these children live in developing countries and die from a disease or a combination of diseases that could be prevented or treated if the means were there. Sometimes the cause is as simple as the lack of antibiotics for treating pneumonia or oral rehydration salts for diarrhea. Malnutrition contributes to over half of these deaths. So again, these were statistics that I got when I was doing research in 2015. So here, I think some people were asking at this time, is this too much for children to handle? In my opinion, no, but it also depends on the grade level. It also depends on how you set up your class or your school. So you still have to build some foundation and some groundwork before you just dive right in. But at the same time, children, I think, especially in the United States, need to be aware of what happens, yes, outside in the global world, but they also need to understand what happens right in their own backyards and sometimes in their own classrooms and schools. So I do remember receiving pushback from some of these questions, but I was like, that's what social justice does. All right, so math-related problem number two. Make a line plot of the data. Antonio often walks around the cafeteria during lunch. How many times per day did he hear other students talking about missing a meal over a month? So I did this problem related to the Common Core state standards. Wow, I did this for grade 5. Okay, cool. Measurement and data to represent and interpret data. That's another thing. Sometimes we hold children back from our own limiting beliefs and thoughts. So this was a real 5th grade problem looking at line plots and data. And then I just tied that into the issues of hunger. So social problem number 3. Annual childhood deaths dipped below 10 million in 2006 to a record low of 9.7 million, even though that's still a lot. While this is good news, most of these deaths are preventable and should not be accepted as inevitable. Some of the leading causes of death are undernutrition, pneumonia, diarrhea, malaria, AIDS, and measles. No matter where we live in this world, infectious diseases continue to cause distress, illness, and even death. Interesting how we just came over a global pandemic at the time of this recording. And I did this presentation back in 2015. Infectious diseases account for millions of school days lost each year for kindergarten through 12th grade public school students in the United States. 40% of children aged 5 to 17 years missed 3 or more school days in the past year because of illnesses or injury. Nearly 22 million school days are lost each year due to colds alone. 38 million school days are lost each year due to influenza viruses, and that was from the CDC. A lot of times we think, school scores, especially in mathematics, are low because children don't understand, children don't know, some children just don't understand mathematics, or the teachers aren't doing a good job. But we don't look at some of the bigger problems. If you're not in school to learn, you're going to be left behind. You'll be surprised how much learning is lost between 1 and 3 days. And if you keep doing that over time and then over the years, you've lost a lot of school, especially if you've been connected with a great teacher. You've lost a lot of instructional time and practice time. And then instead of saying something that's like the students can't learn, we got issues like this, like being sick. And then why are they being sick? So that's where it becomes a social problem, like are the resources in place? So mathematics related problem number 3. Many of the students at Antonio's school get sick from the flu. During the 5th grade assembly, the guest speaker, Dr. Edward, asked what were the best ways to take care of themselves. The categories were stay in bed and eat soup, take store-bought medicine, receive the flu shot, go to the doctor, or use grandma's secret remedy. How many of you have a grandma's secret remedy? I have one, and I'll say it really worked during the global pandemic that we just had. Not to say that I don't believe in modern medicine, because I do, but sometimes we need what grandma had cooking in the kitchen. All right. While the students gave different answers, Dr. Edwards said he loved his grandmother's recipe. Oh, I didn't even know I wrote that before I made that statement. Dr. Edwards said that at the end of the recipe, he and his grandmother each had a lime. They needed 1 cup of lime juice to complete the sauce. Dr. Edwards squeezed half of a cup from his lime, and his grandmother squeezed 2/5 of a cup from her lime. How much lime juice did they have, and was it enough? Okay, clearly I didn't realize I made this whole problem. Okay. This is so much. So again, I'm having fun with this. All right, so I got this from the infectious disease word problem, and then I tied it to the Common Core State Standards for 5th grade and numbers and operations and fractions. So the students had to do real world problems anyway. They had to learn about fractions anyway. So why not tie this to an actual issue for students to really solve? One, their understanding what's happening in the world, and 2, they're looking at how mathematics truly can make a difference in the world. So although this was a smaller problem, talking about grandmother's recipes, I'm pretty sure if you really talk to your students, and again, this is 5th grade, they're old enough. And then even you can do this with adults, because I did this with adults and people were engaged in the conversation. But then you're realizing, like, building connections, learning about different people and their families, and then learning about mathematics. All right, social problem number 4. Globally, more than 125 million children under 5 live in homes without access to an improved water source, and more than 280 million live in households without improved sanitation facilities. Again, I did this presentation in 2015. It could be more or less now that we're in 2021. Currently, almost 50% of the developing world's population, 2.5 billion, so I think we're at like almost 8 billion now. But back then, 2.5 billion people lacked improved sanitation facilities, and over 884 million people still use unsafe drinking water from different sources. The number of individuals without these basic services is expected to continue to grow. Lack of safe water and sanitation is the world's single largest cause of illness, and the second highest cause of preventable childhood deaths. About 4,000 children dying daily from waterborne illnesses. Again, I didn't read these problems when I was doing the presentation. I either had someone from the group read them or I let them read them on their own. But this is for my auditory people. Water and sanitation related illnesses include diarrhea, which kills nearly 2.2 million children, mostly under the age of 5 each year. Malaria, a disease exacerbated by poor drainage and uncovered water, and trachoma, a disease caused by the lack of water combined with poor hygiene practices, has blinded millions of people. Studies have found that access to adequate water simply could reduce trachoma by 25%. In addition, hand washing with soap is linked to dramatic reduction in the incidence of respiratory illnesses such as pneumonia, the number 1 cause of childhood mortality globally. I'm not gonna say too much, but interesting how during this pandemic, the main thing was please wash your hands and how that was connected to how the pandemic was connected to respiratory issues. Just find it very interesting. So this was back in 2006, this resource. So that was the situation for the social justice. Now this is the mathematics related problem. So you kind of see the pattern that I'm doing. How much water do you use every day in your home? Do you think people in other parts of the world use more or less water than Americans? And I should have said in the United States, because to be technically correct, the North America includes Canada as well. And then some people still argue that the entire continent also includes Mexico. So it just depends on how you look at this, but I'm referring to the United States. So the problem is a pentagonal container that holds water for a small town is 1/4 full. After pouring in 18 gallons of water, it is now 5/8 full. How many gallons can the container hold? And people, oh my gosh, adults still hate fractions to this day. People were shutting down. I do remember now, people were shutting down like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this problem. But think about it. If the adults didn't want to do the problem, what do you think the students are going to do? How do you think they're going to react? And that was another issue that I was having, but that's not what we're talking about today. So we're wrapping up. We have one more. I think I did 5 areas. Yes. Social problem number 5, race distribution. The overwhelming majority, 97% of the total U.S. population reported only one race in 2010. The group totaled 299.7 million. Of these, the largest group reported, white alone, 223.6 million, accounting for 72% of all people living in the United States. The Black or African American population, I say Black American now, totaled 38.9 million and represented 13% of the total population. Of course, this was in 2010. We are 11 years out at the time of this recording, so very different numbers. Approximately 14.7 million people, about 5% of all respondents, identified their race as Asian alone. There were 2.9 million respondents who indicated American Indian and Alaska Native alone, so 0.9% or 0.9%. The smallest major race group was Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander alone, which was 500,000, which represented 0.2% or 0.2% of the total population. The remainder of respondents who reported only one race, 19.1 million people, so 6% of all respondents, were classified as some other race alone. And this was from the census back in 2010. So we're just breaking down all the different categories of people and looking at it as numbers. From a mathematical perspective alone, helping a student understand the quantity of those numbers is important. And a lot of times I think of teachers or just people in general would just brush off numbers and not really understanding the magnitude of hundreds of millions of people. So math-related problem number 5, I got this from, I did have a disclaimer. I don't think all the percentages add up to 100% because they were rounding. And then I got this from the Common Core State Standards. This was an actual problem and I kind of just modified it with the issue. So this was a grade 5 problem and it was understanding place value. So the students are capable of doing a lot, and this was 5th grade. So if the estimated world population in 1894 was 6,157 million and about 60% of the people were Pacific, that doesn't sound right. But anyway, was Pacific Islander, what was the approximate number of people who were Pacific Islander to the nearest million? There are about 4,358 students in Antonio blended school. About 38% of those students are 2 or more races. About how many students are enrolled in Antonio school and are there that are 2 or more races? Write the 2010 census population and present population for Hispanic or Latino, and I think we say Latinx now, and some other race using base 10 numerals. All right, so I think I was giving a grand picture, and then so understanding what that looks like in the world. I think this is supposed to be, no, I think that was right. And then I was bringing it down to the classroom perspective. Let's look at what is happening in your school and looking at these numbers, helping students understand size, numbers, place value, be able to read charts and everything like that. And again, I said the percentages did not add up to 100% because of a lot of rounding. And the word problem again was around racial differences. We had a lot of conversation at the conference now that I'm remembering when I was presenting these problems. So not only were we talking about mathematics, but we were also bringing light or shedding light to issues that are happening in our world, in our countries, in our communities, and even in our actual school buildings, or even in the virtual space now. So in conclusion, Antonio has learned a lot from his journey through expressing his interest and bringing awareness to the issues of his classmates. He understands that mathematics is needed to solve real life problems, not just real world problems. Antonio is now developing a love for mathematics. He just needed it to make sense. So I have this quote, I am in math class and now I am learning how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide away my classmates' issues. Oh my goodness. So the final thoughts, critical pedagogy at the core, strategy to support teachers in developing social justice through mathematics. Again, it promotes openness, debate, and engagement. And as you can see, those questions, even if we didn't use them in the classroom, which I encourage people to do. But even as adults, they promoted all of that openness. Some people still could debate. And then the fact of engagement, either solving the actual problems or just realizing the magnitude of some of these issues. And then rigor, conceptual understanding, the actual math problems, and how to, the why behind those actual math problems, like the plots, the charts, the fractions, and then the procedural skills of doing the problems, and then the applications, how does doing those problems, how to interject them onto real life issues to have a solution to the problems. So around all of this, and remember way back, I talked about the standards for mathematical practices. This one was really heavy on SMP1, make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. So these are all the references, more references, stop share. And then at the end, I say thank you. So I know this one was like very intense and you went through me reading these problems. That's another tip. One, don't have all of the words on your slide, and two, do handouts. I started learning to do handouts and having them already uploaded to the conference sites before I got there, or telling people to go here and download them. I don't want to read all of this, so I did that for you for the video and the recording. Again, you can mute me and just read the problems yourself, but I just wanted to show that I was still, now I'm looking back to now what my focus is, and I started doing consulting work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then who knew that all the way back then that it was leading up to that. So this has been fun for me, the evolution of my career. And I'll be honest, I haven't read through them prior to doing these videos because I wanted to keep my thoughts pure and be surprised along with you all. So again, thank you so much. We were talking about how this relates, and I want you to do the same. Comment down below if you're taking this challenge or this journey with me. What are your thoughts about teaching mathematics for social justice? Do you think it's still relevant at this time, or do you think we just need to throw it all away? I would love to hear from you, all right? So I am Dr. V. Thank you so much for listening and learning with me. And remember this, to be well, to be empowered, to be bold, and to be brilliant. Until next time, bye.